Hello everyone, my name is Elijah David, minister of the 12th Hour Apostolic Sabbatarian Congregation, Mount South, the 12th Hour of Liberty Hill, Texas. Today is August 6, 2013, or it is the 8:30 of 2017. We will start our first service today with a song entitled, What a Friend We Have in Yahshua. What a friend we have in Yahshua, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to Yah in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry everything to Yah in prayer. Every trials and temptation, is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Yahshua in prayer, and we find a friend so faithful, who will all our burdens bear. Yahshua knows our every weakness. Take it to the Yahshua in prayer. Are we weak and heavy laden, comfort with the load of care? Precious Savior, still a refuge. Take it to the Yahshua in prayer. In our friends despise, forsake thee, take it to the Yahshua in prayer. In his arms he'll take and shield thee. Thou wilt find the solace there. Hello everyone, once again this is Elijah David. We're going to continue our series now on Everlasting Kingdom of the David. This is part number 3. We're on page 22 of my book that I've compiled, and we're going to do a little review on this wheat and barley for a penny. A measure of penny. Let's look at it here. Wheat and barley each for a penny. In the study of the 7 seals, or with the future reservation for the explanation of the following scripture. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, a measure of the wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of the barley for a penny. Revelation 6:6. Again we turn the reader's attention unto the fact that the voice came from the throne. See chapter 5, verses 11. For the great judge fixes the price of the cereals. For there must be something of the great importance in these symbols, for the Yahweh is with the speaking. For the Weymouth translation, that's your dictionary, is with the following reading. For a whole day's wage is for a loaf of the bread, also a whole day's wage for the 3 barley cakes. For the Weymouth translation is by the penny as a day's wage. For we believe the words of the Yahshua is with the justification of this fact. For the kingdom of the heavens is like unto a man that is an householder, who went out early in the morning for the hiring of the laborers into his vineyard, Isaiah 5:7. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. Matthew 20, verse 1 and 2. For the penny is with the fixing of the day's wage by the householder of the vineyard. The householder, as we know, is the Yeshua, for he bought this house with his blood. Okay? For the barley is with the 1/3 of the price of the wheat. For the one goes into the field and is with the gathering only one measure of the wheat and receives a full day's pay. As the other one with the working all the day for the gathering of the 3 measures of the barley is with the receiving of the same day's wage, a penny. For the symbols have a very close connection with the parable given by the Yeshua, for herein is a truth for the requiring of the earnest attention. And he went out about the 3rd hour. All right, now here we go. Again, here we go. He went out about the 3rd hour. Right here. This is the beginning of the 3rd hour. Real students of, pay close attention and become real students of what we're dealing with here. Now I'm going to try to zoom this up enough to where we can all see it together. All right, 3rd hour. Went out about the 3rd hour. Now when we use that preposition about, we're talking about not completely at the end of the 3rd hour, but in the 3rd hour, somewhere. All right, Yeshua at his birth started the 3rd parabolic hour. Okay, in 4 BC. When he reached 30 years old in 27 AD, according to the modern time, they messed up 4 years there, but that's okay. We're still, Yeshua's 30 years old in AD 27, according to modern time. And that's when he started his ministry. Well, he went by the seaside. And first he went to the temple and overturned the money changers, cleansed the temple, and then he went out by the seaside and started gathering his cabinet members, the disciples. Went into the marketplace there and found Matthew, found Luke, the physician, or Matthew the physician. Matthew was a tax collector, actually. So anyway, he found them about the 3rd hour. In other words, somewhere between the 3rd and the closing out of the 3rd hour, here between 3 and 4, he went to work at the age of 30 years old as a householder. And he hired people to work for him, to become his ministers, to be able to duplicate what he had the power to do. And that was heal the sick and raise the dead. Now, he very much brought that gift with him from his father, and he is in very much need of passing it on to his chosen disciples, those that he was to leave the work with. Once he finishes his work and goes back to heaven, he had to have disciples prepared and empowered with the same spirit that he had to be able to raise the dead and heal the sick. Now, you can't beat that, folks, for heavenly gifts. The Father puts these upon his Son. He sends his Son to this earth. His Son chooses his chosen vessel. And he empowers them to do the same thing that he is able to do. And so, at 30 years old, about the 3rd hour, in the third hour, he goes out and sets up his kingdom of grace, the eternal kingdom of David. But at the disciples in their time, at that time, it was a temporal kingdom of grace that was established in the house of David, tribe of Judah, lawgiver. Yahshua being the lawgiver, sitting upon the throne of David invisibly. Yahshua sat upon the throne of David as the king of Israel when he came to this earth. Invisibly, that was his title. He didn't sit upon it visibly. He wasn't supposed to. But when he went back to heaven after his crucifixion, he sat upon that throne. And they coronated him as King of Kings and Sovereign of Sovereigns at that time. 40 days after his resurrection, he was coronated in the heavens as King of Kings and Sovereign upon the throne of David. For the throne of David, you see, has its origin in the heavens. Okay? So now here, about the third hour. So now let's go back to my book. Actually, my book is entitled Eden to Eden. Actually, that's the official title. And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. Now, in any town, in a farming area, if you have men looking for work, or if you're in a city somewhere, if you have men looking for work, they get up in the morning and they prepare themselves and they go to the city and they go to the courthouse square, and that's called the marketplace in a city. And so they take their place around the courthouse square, and when farmers or somebody needs extra help or laborers, they come to the city and they drive around the market square and they see men standing there idle. And so they hire these men to come and work for them, either temporal or permanent. And so that's called the marketplace. So then where does he take them from the marketplace? He takes them out to his farm, and he takes them out to his field. And he puts them in to work in his vineyard in the field. Okay? So the marketplace is one place, and the vineyard is another place. The marketplace is where you go to get hired, and spiritually speaking, that would be when the Adventist church were active and doing the gospel work. You would go and join them if you wanted to work in the vineyard. You had to go to the marketplace, you had to go to their church and inquire how to become a member, to get qualified so that they could hire you to go to work in their vineyard. Okay. So Yahshua went out about the third hour and he went to the marketplace. Where was the marketplace? It was in the temple, at the temple site in Jerusalem, where the Pharisees and the Sadducees had control of. That was the marketplace. And the disciples went there every worship hour to worship. And every holy day they went there to worship along with the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Everybody used the temple. That's the marketplace. They'd go and do their worship, and then they'd go back out to their field in the vineyard. Their vineyard was in wherever they lived, around Jerusalem. So now here's his householder. He went out about the third hour, right here, third hour. and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way. And again he went out about the 6th and the 9th hour, right here, 6th and the 9th hour, and did likewise. And about the 11th hour, look at here, about the 11th hour, 6, 9, and all the way over here to 11. Folks, we're getting close to the end of the clock. We only got 2 hours to sundown now when it comes to 11. Look here, 11 and 12, and when the 12th hour is finished, you have sundown. Look here at number 1 again. Okay, so now he went out about the 11th hour. And in our day, prophetically, the 11th hour started in 1970 at the third feeding pasture for the Seventh-day Adventists, Gilead Center, Mount Gilead, with the angel of the candlestick, the householder of the vineyard. Brother W. Johnson is as antitypical Esau because he was the elder, and he's the one that has the birthright. Okay, and so now he's in charge of the candlestick of Laodicea at Mount Gilead in Kermit, Texas, from 1970 to 2003, and I was with him, working with him. I worked right along with him in the marketplace, the church. I stood in that sacred desk many times giving the prayer thought. Never was allowed to preach a sermon, though, because that was exclusively for Esau. Brother Johnson, he's very jealous of his pulpit. I call it the sacred lectern, he called it the pulpit. Means pull that desk down on top of you in the pit if you're teaching false doctrine. That's what the pulpit means. But if you're saying sacred desk, that's a little different story. Okay, that's the difference in carnal and spiritual. You call everything by its right name. Everything has a meaning. Every word has a direct meaning, either positive or negative. And he went out about the 11th hour, 1970. Now this is at the beginning of the 11th hour. The top of the 11th hour here is when the 11th hour came to an end. The top of the 11th hour then would be 12. The beginning of 12, the end of 11 would be the top of it. Fulfillment of it. Alright? He went out about the 11th hour. Okay, now in this case he went out at the beginning of the 11th hour. Okay. And the 11th hour started in 1970. Because see, there's not another call made in the scriptures pointing out whether there's any more calls for laborers after the 11th hour call. Because see, Brother Johnson was working in the vineyard for the Seventh-day Adventist Church as a shepherd rod member, feeding in Mount Carmel, second feeding pasture for the Adventists, Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, and that's where he got his extra oil to put in his extra vessel. That's what prepared him for his work for the new feeding pasture and for the top of the 11th hour when it began, or the beginning of the 11th hour. Okay. So now, Brother Johnson, prophecy pointed out that the 10th hour ended in 1970 with the second feeding pasture of Mount Carmel, the shepherd rod passing off the scene. Their period was over. They had a 40-year period from 1930 to 1970. Passed off the scene. And so now he gets his call in the end of the 10th hour. Brother Johnson. Right here. 1844, the 10th hour, up to 1970. He gets his call about 1968, 2 years before the 10th hour parabolically closed out. So, this is right, the parable is right. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing idle, and saith unto them, why stand ye here all the day idle? For they say unto him, because no man hath hired us. Now, okay, now, I also was called here at the end of the 10th hour to go to work in the vineyard at the 11th hour with Brother W. Johnson and Triple Esau. But he was called first. He had already went in and set the kingdom up and was occupying it, had it going. And then Yeshua came and found me in the marketplace. And where was the marketplace? In the Adventist church. I had rejoined the Adventist church. I'd been in and out of the Adventist church for many years. I had rejoined the Adventist church about 1967, 3 years before I met Brother W. Johnson. Actually 4 years total. So I was working, and I went and rejoined the Adventist church, started paying my tithes and offerings and helping the ministry to do their church work. I was not ordained an elder among them because, well, I was just a member. That's all I wanted to be, was just a member. I wanted to help them do harvest and gathering and various different things like that, but I didn't want to be an elder or a deacon. I just wanted to be a member and be free to come and go and not have any other extra responsibilities. I liked to have been a Sabbath school teacher, but they wouldn't appoint me as a Sabbath school teacher because I was always inquiring, wanting to learn about the 144,000. And they strongly suspected that that was a doctrine of the shepherd rod, and that I might be trying to infiltrate them, so they wouldn't let me have any position as a Sabbath school teacher. But they tolerated me because I paid my tithes and offerings, and they liked that. And so, therefore, I was in the marketplace for about 4 years, and Yeshua came and found me standing idle at the beginning of the 11th hour. I was standing idle in the marketplace in the Adventist church in the 10th parabolic hour. And that's where I was hired. Because it's important. Yeshua only hires those that are preordained to carry on the work to succeed the first one that he hired. He hired Brother Johnson first. And then he hired me to prepare me to learn my lessons well and to work under my mentor and tutor, Antipa Esau. And so I spent 33 years supporting and working with Antipa Esau, the one with the birthright. All the time knowing that if I was in charge, I would do things much differently than he did. But I wasn't supposed to, and so therefore I minded my P's and Q's, and I did exactly what I was commanded to do for 33 years under Esau's hierarchy. So, when the 33 years was up and the 11th hour was up in 2002, 2003 at Kermit, Texas, I had 33 years to fill my vessel with the extra oil, that extra vessel I had. I brought that extra vessel out of the Adventist church. I was trying to fill that extra vessel in the Adventist church with the knowledge of the 144,000, and they wouldn't. They didn't have anything to put into that vessel for me. But I carried that vessel on into the Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventist with Brother Johnson, and that's where I filled my vessel for 33 years. I found a fountain flowing for sin and uncleanness, and that's where I filled my vessel with that knowledge coming out of that flowing fountain. Zechariah 13 and Ezekiel 47 river. All right. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing idle, and saith unto them, Why stand ye here all the day idle? Okay. For they said unto him, Because no man had hired us. And I would say to Yahshua, when he hired me in 1970, when he asked me that question, I said, well, I couldn't find an Adventist minister that was willing to hire me. I went and offered my labors freely, and they took that. But as far as hiring me to be like them and to teach the truth, they weren't interested. And so therefore they didn't hire me to do that. They didn't invite me to come to there and go to their schools and become a ordained minister. They didn't invite me to do any of that. That would qualify me to be a minister for them. No, they just wanted me to pay my tithes and offerings and help them do menial work outside of that. Okay. So he said unto them, Go, and Yahshua told me, he said, Now you go also into the vineyard. So where did I go to work when he hired me in 1970? Right here at the top of the beginning. I call it the top of the 11th hour. It's the beginning of the 11th hour. Parabolic. So where did I go to work? I immediately left the vineyard of Mount Bashan, which is a dried up feeding pasture for the Adventists, and had been ever since 1890. And you figure it out. For 80 years, Mount Bashan had been dried up. And Mount Bashan was a lush feeding pasture from 1844 to 1890 for the Adventists. But Ellen G. White at the helm, leading the way with the pen of inspiration every step of the way. For 46 years, the Adventists fed in that lush feeding pasture of Bashan. But then whenever they rejected Jones and Ryder's message in 1888, 1890, what did they do? That feeding pasture dried up. And Ellen G. White says unto them, until you make use of the truth that you have already been given, no more new light will come from my pen. And sure enough, it stopped. And whenever that inspiration stopped flowing through Ellen G. White, and it stopped being transmitted on to the laity, the people, and that's when that feeding pasture dried up. So, Ellen G. White only wrote reproof and admonition for the next 25 years, from 1890 to 1915, until she died. That's all the Adventists ever got from her. So, showing that feeding pasture had dried up. Adventists rejected the second feeding pasture, Mount Carmel, that succeeded them, the Shepherd Rod in 1930. And so they didn't get to move on into that second feeding pasture and feed from a new lush feeding pasture opening up. And so they then rejected that message from 1930 to 1970, another 40 years. So the Adventists by 1970, at the top of at the beginning of the 11th hour, at Gilead Center, starting the third feeding pasture, Mount Gilead, there in the far reaches of West Texas, out in the desert, away from the hill country of Judea, out in the wilderness of Judea, folks, out in the wilderness of Judea. There's a wilderness of Judea and there's a hill country of Judea. You go from the city to the hill country, you go from the hill country to the desert or the wilderness. Okay, Brother Johnson was raised in the hill country. Yahweh sent him out to the wilderness, to the desert, to spend his 40-year period, in which he did. But he only got to serve about 33 years of it, from 1970 to 2003, with the church intact. And it was split from him after 33 years, and then he spent the next 10 years running it on his own until he died. So, there you have it. It says, for the householder and the parable is with the reference for the Yahshua, son, for the parable is for the revealing of the kingdom of the heaven. For the vineyard, Isaiah 5:7, is with the representation as the field, the field in the world. and those sent for the laboring in the vineyard are of the congregation of the Israel. For the parable cannot refer unto one little day of the 12 hours into the time that the Yeshua makes the 5 calls for the laborers in the vineyard, for there is no record where the Yeshua is with the raising of the 5 Israel's organizations in the one day, with them all operating at the same time. And the 5 calls in the parable must extend over, or for the 5 calls in the parable must extend over a period of the world's history in the connection with the Israel's congregation, and for the period that the Yeshua is with the allegorically comparing as a 12-hour day, for he is with the hiring of the laborers on the 5 different occasions. For the locating of the time for each one of these calls are with the referring and fully comprehending of the lesson and time that we are living, for the proving that the parable is with the reference for the wheat and barley, each for a penny. Okay. Now folks, I just caught up to where we left off on our last sermon's recording. And now we're going to start with some new material. It says, note, for the householders with the bargaining only with the first ones for the hiring into his vineyard, Isaiah 5:7, and of the going for their work in the morning. Note, for the householder is with the bargaining only with the first ones for the hiring in his vineyard, Isaiah 5:7, and of the going for their work in the morning, first hour. In the morning at the first hour, here it is, right here. Moses, children of Israel, 1500 BC. Alright, coming out of Egypt, coming out of Egyptian bondage, under Pharaoh and under sin, delivered by the blood of the everlasting covenant at the Passover. It says, for the householder is with the hiring of the 5 separate groups of the laborers at the 5 different intervals. Here's your first one. First hour, 3rd hour, 6th hour, 9th hour, and the 11th hour. First hour, 1500 BC. 3rd hour at the cross, Yeshua and the disciples. 6th hour, William Miller and Company, 1833. 9th hour, Ellen G. White, Seventh-day Adventist, 1844. 11th hour, 2002. Now you have dates put on these 5 groups of laborers that were hired during Matthew 20 by the householder, which is Yeshua. Okay? So now what are we learning? We're learning to put names, places, face, and dates on the parables and prophecies. Moses, children of Israel, first hour. Coming out of Egypt, 1500 BC. Yeshua, the disciples, at the 3rd hour, 27 AD. There's your date, there's your name, there's your faces, and your place. Number 6, William Miller. Okay, with a 2300 day prophecy and the cleansing of the sanctuary. Making its fulfillment 1844, right here at the 9th hour. And then the 11th hour in 2002, closing out the judgment of the dead, that the 9th hour people were in charge of, the Seventh-day Adventists. That the Seventh-day Adventists exclusively only had charge of the judgment of the dead from 1844 to 2002. Between this 10 and this 12, which is 2 parabolic hours that covered 158 years, 1844 to 2002, is a judgment that belonged exclusively only to the Adventists. And I was in with the 3rd feeding pasture the last step of the genuine movement for the Seventh-day Adventist, with the last prophet placed in charge of the candlestick Laodicea. Okay, and so now I worked the whole 11th hour along with the antipode Esau, because I had the position of antipode Jacob at the time, in the 11th parabolic hour. But it's Jacob's time and Esau. Now Jacob's time has met its fulfillment here at the 12th hour, 2002, with the bringing forth of the descendants of his 12 sons, the 144,000. And the house of David, that inherited the house of Jacob, tribe of Judah, lawgiver, is the one that receives the descendants of Jacob, his seed, the 144,000. Jacob delivers again. First he delivered the 12 sons. He brought forth the 12 sons, and he went out, and he had to leave his father's house. He stayed 20 years in a foreign land. And that's where he got his 12 sons. Took him 20 years, and he had to go into a foreign land to get his 12 sons that would represent the 12 patriarchs of the Old Testament, that would represent the 12 apostles at the beginning of the New Testament, and that would represent the 144,000 for the wrapping up of the New Testament era. Okay, now, here we have it. We're in the 12th parabolic hour, and I want to read on now from my book. It says, for the fourth interval being next to the fifth, and last call at the 11th hour, here's your fourth interval, right here, 1970. Okay. It says, for the fourth interval being next into the fifth, all right, here's your fourth interval, 9th hour, 1844, the 5th, 11th hour, 1970, actually for the beginning of the 11th hour. 11th hour ends here in 2002, and so this is where we count the change of the guard. This is where the judgment dead ends, this is where the judgment living begins, this is where the 12th hour begins. And this is the hour that we're in now. We've been in it for 10 years, from actually 2003 to 2013 has been 10 years now. So, for the fourth interval being next to the fifth and last call at the parabolic 11th hour is with the 2-hour interval. 10, 11, ends here at 12, 2-hour interval. Okay. For the fourth interval is with the culminating at the end of the 11th parabolic hour, 2002, Matthew 20, verse 6. And for the beginning of the 12th prophetic hour, Matthew 20, verse 6. With the beginning at the end of the solemn assembly, Matthew 28, 2002. Unto the close of the probation at the 12th hour, is with the getting of the last hour of the daylight, beginning at the modern time 5 p.m., which will be right here. Hour 12, when it strikes 12, 1 hour before sundown. Today on your modern clock will be 5 p.m. Okay, and by the 1 hour before the sunset parabolic time at the going down of the sun, modern time, 6 p.m. Sun goes down here at 6 p.m. Now 1 begins to start the second 12 hours of the day. And then you go from 1 to 1, and you've completed 12 full hours of the second half of your day, making 24 hours altogether. From 1 on top to 1 on top over here, you have 12 parabolic hours. From 1 here on top to 1 on top here, you have 12 parabolic hours. Perfect 24 parabolic hours. No hours overlapping each other. No 12 overlapping the 1. In other words, when you move this clock up 1 notch, get it one hour out of place, then you have the 12th hour overlapping the 1. In other words, the first hour of the night. if you have the 12th hour ending here at the beginning of the night, then that 12th hour has to have its dues. It has to receive its 60 minutes equivalent. So therefore it has to rob 1 hour of the night, the first hour of the night. If you happen to let the man of sin move your clock dial forward 1 notch, which they have all over the world, and I have successfully moved these numbers back, re-educating the people now, because your clock dial in ancient time always started with 1 in the morning. Guaranteed. When the sun came up in the morning, it marked the first hour, not the 12th hour of the night. Because see, the sun dial can only work when the sun is shining on it. And it always has it starting on shine on the first hour. You don't shine on the last, the sun can't shine on the last hour of the night. Matter of fact, the 12 hours of the night are not marked by hours. They're marked by watches. There are four 3-hour watches in a 12-hour night. No need for hours at night to be marked. That's when everybody's sleeping. You put the night watchman on their duty at night, and they change shifts every 3 hours. 4 of them for the night. You ever hear that saying, "Watchman, what of the night? Watchman, what of the night?" I believe that's even in Scripture. So it says, for the 4th interval being next unto the 5th, and last call at the 11th hour is with the 2-hour interval, for the 4th interval is with the culminating at the end of the 11th prophetic hour, 2002, and for the beginning of the 12th prophetic hour, 2002, and with the beginning at the end of the Solemn Assembly, September 28, 2003, until the close of the probation that will take place at the end of the 12th parabolic hour. So now the 12th parabolic hour ends here at 1, when the sun goes down. Millennium begins. Probation is closed. It's all over, folks. Okay. So now it says ancient time clock. For the better understanding of the ancient time clock is with a brief explanation. For the more comprehensive understanding is with the calling of the reader's attention. For the viewing of the chart, well, I don't have that chart right here in front of me. Yes, I do. Matter of fact, this is the chart we're talking about. I thought we were talking about the 12-hour chart that I'm working on. This is a 24-hour chart. Okay. In the days of the Yeshua, and even now in some countries, is with the regulation of the time by the sunset at the 12 o'clock. Near the equator, with the days and nights being continually equal, is with the setting of the sun at the 12 p.m. and rising at the 12 a.m. No, sun setting at the 1 p.m. We got to change our our vernacular. We got to get reprogrammed, but we moved these notches all back 1, and so now it's 1 p.m. Meaning at the beginning of the first hour of the night, that's called 1 p.m. You start with the first night. After the sun goes down at 12, you start with the first hour after going down the sun, and that's when you have the beginning of the night. That's when you have the 1 p.m. Okay? So therefore, the 6 o'clock would be at the noon hour in the light part, according unto the chart, and at the 6 o'clock in the dark part would be the midnight, for this is with the time that the Yeshua used in the parable. For the first through the 5th call, okay, now we're looking at the first through the 5th call, 1500 BC, through the 5th call is exactly about 3,500 years difference. It took 3,500 years to cover the 5 calls in the parable of Matthew 20. Starting with 1500 BC with Moses and ending with Elijah David, 2002. Number 1, first call at the early morning, Matthew 20 verse 1 and 2. 1500 BC. Second call, 27 AD, at the cross. Third call, 1833, William Miller. Fourth call, 1844, Ellen G. White. Fifth call, 2002, Elijah David. With the previous explanation of the Revelation 6:6, a measure of the wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of the body for a penny, we shall endeavor for the proving that the symbols point back into the parable of the householder. And Yeshua allegorically looking forward unto the John's vision. For the explanation perfectly fits of the parable and vision in the harmony with the Elohim's book and law, and as a present truth lesson is for the learning and for the accepting of the truth. Morning call. We've already been through that. Moses, early morning, 1500 BC. So let's just read the Bible scripture on it. For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is in a household, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. And when he had agreed to laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. For the Yeshua could have no reference unto any other people other than the Israel after the flesh coming out of Egypt with Moses. For they are the ones with whom the Yeshua is with the bargaining and sending into his vineyard, Isaiah 5:7. Okay. For the labor is with the consisting of the representing of the Creator. Actually, are a householder, and for the giving of the righteous scriptures, for the giving of the scriptures, for the psalmist is with the making of the following record of the agreement. He hath remembered his covenant forever, the word which he commanded unto 1,000 generations, which covenant he made with Abraham, and his oath unto Isaac, and with the confirming of the same unto the Jacob for a law, and unto the Israel for an everlasting covenant. Psalms 105, 8-10. Israel is the name of Jacob after he overcomes. You get a permanent name change to Israel when you overcome. For the covenant is with the making of a promise with Abraham, and his seed is with the obtaining of the promise. For his oath unto the Isaac is with the Elohim solemnly declaring that he will be with the fulfilling of his agreement. For the Isaac, even as his father obtained not the promise, is with the Elohim confirming of the same unto the Jacob. For the administrating, settling, are with the establishing of the covenant. With the establishing of the covenant with the Abraham is with the realization by the Jacob as a law, and with the Israel receiving of the promise for an everlasting covenant. For the departure of the Israelites going out of Egypt are with the first, for the going forth laboring in the vineyard, Isaiah 5:7. According unto the word that I covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt, so my spirit remaineth among you. Fear ye not, as in Haggai 2:5. For the Isaiah is with the speaking of the vineyard, which in itself is a symbol of the world. Therefore the householder's early hour call for the laborers into his vineyard, Isaiah 5:7, applies unto the call of the Israel out of Egypt, 2002. First call, early in the morning. Why is it called early in the morning? For the Moses at that time is with the writing of the scriptures as the light of the world. For the very early is with the applying at the beginning of the writing, okay, of the scriptures. For the arrival of the written word is with the commencement of the first hour of the daylight. According unto the parable, is with the signification that the written word of the Elohim is for the light of the world. Here's your daylight. When Moses began to transcribe the Bible, the scriptures, in written form, constitutes the light of the scriptures coming up. Okay. The second call at the third hour, and when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard, in Matthew 20, verse 2. For the wage agreed upon between the parties is by the promise of the Elohim unto the Israel. And he went out about the third hour, and saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and saith unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way. Matthew 20, verse 3 and 4. With the establishing of the first call, it would not be difficult then to determine the second. Establishing Moses, 1500 BC, Israel coming out of Egypt, first call. It's not hard then to establish the second call with the third hour call laborers. Okay? So it says, note, they were not of the same company. Okay? Verily of the others who were idle. If not Israel, then it can only be the apostles and the Gentiles in the beginning of the apostolic era, 27 AD, Acts 13:46. Then the Paul and Barnabas waxed bold, and said, For it is necessary that the word of Elohim should first have been spoken unto you, but seeing ye put it from you, and judge yourselves unworthy of the everlasting life, lo, we turn unto the Gentiles. Note that there is no bargaining with the second coming, for they went having confidence in the good man that they would receive whatsoever is right, for the call of the Gentiles is not based upon any special agreement, for they responded with the trusting in the Elohim's generous promise unto the Israel, as with the recording in the scriptures, for the call of the apostles and Gentiles is with the representation by the third hour call. Now we come to the 6th and 9th hour calls. Again, he went out about the 6th and 9th hour. William Miller, 1833, 9th hour. Ellen G. White, Little Advent Band, 1844. And did likewise, Matthew 20, verse 5. For the each of the calls are at the intervals by the extending over the entire day, is with the evident that they must come one after another at the different periods. On each occasion there must be a call in the form of a message. If so, it cannot be merely a call for a reformation or obedience unto a formal message. For the Reformation by the Martin Luther, the Catholic monk with a call to come out of the Babylon, 1500 AD, as the antitypical Abraham. Herein is not into consideration, for it is only a revival of the message delivered before his time. Said to Martin Luther, For the just shall live by the faith in the blood of the Yahshua, Romans 1:17. I added in the blood of Yahshua because that's exactly what it means. For the Knox, Wesley, and Campbell could not enter into the parable, for they too are only with a call for the Reformation, or obedience unto the former message of the doctrines delivered unto the Gentiles by the early apostolic congregation of the disciples For the apostles taught grace by the washing and baptism with the immersion by the Campbell. For the presenting of the further proof from another angle is for the showing that the above stated reformers are without the inclusion in the parable. As the Israel and the Gentile in the first and second calls are with the comprising of the Elohim's congregation in the vineyard, Isaiah 5:7, then the third, fourth, and fifth calls must represent the Israel in the vineyard, Isaiah 5:7, as well. Now we turn the reader's attention unto the woman with the crown of the 12 stars of Revelation 12:1, 6, 14. For she, being a symbol of the congregation, is giving of the wings of an eagle for the flying into the wilderness for the 1260 days or years. Being in the wilderness, there could have been no congregation in the vineyard, Isaiah 5:7. For the long prophetic period is for the fixing and accepting as the period 538 AD to 1798 AD. With the long wilderness journey of the woman, there can be no call for the laborers in the vineyard. For the three last calls in the parable are with the fulfillment after the year of 1798. So, between 538 AD and 1798, there can be no cause for the working in the vineyard. But after 1798, you had your first call then to work in the vineyard in 1833 by William Miller. Second call was Ellen G. White Advent Band, 1844. And the third call, 2002, Elijah David with the House of David, tribe of Judah, lawgiver, closing out the judgment for the dead and begin the judgment living in the 12th parabolic tower. Okay, now, we look like we have us about 1 minute left here. We're going to probably just go ahead and bring this sermon to a close with a song entitled Lower Lights. Let the lower lights be burning. Brightly beams our Father's mercy from His lighthouse evermore. But to us He gives the keeping of the lights along the shore. Let the lower lights be burning, send a gleam across the way. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may save. Dark the night, the sin has settled, now the angry billows roar. Eager eyes are watching, longing for the lights along the shore. Let the lower lights be burning, send a gleam across the way. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may save. When you feel the lamps, my brother, some poor sailor tempest tossed, trying now to make the harbor in the darkness may be lost. Let the lower lights be burning, send a gleam across the way. Some poor friend